Yo guys, I hope you're all good and welcome back to the Marin Bikes YouTube channel. As you can see, we're back on the Rift Zone Carbon 2. We're in a car park and that's because we're going to be running through how to do an endo, and then moving on from that we're going to move into doing a front pivot. For those of you who don't know, an endo is using your front brake to get your back wheel up in the air in a controlled way, and a pivot is an extension of that, and that is basically doing an endo but actually rotating at the same time and basically giving yourself a change of direction with minimal space to move around. It might seem like it's a show-off kind of trialsy trick, but it's actually a super practical move when you're out riding on the trails, either to get around a really sharp corner that you're maybe not comfortable going at speed with, or it's also a move that can get you out of trouble. Maybe you've misjudged a corner, or even at the start of the trail, to kind of quickly give yourself a minor adjustment to get you back on your way and heading in the right direction. So as you can see, I'm here on my full sus mountain bike, the Rift Zone Carbon 2. You can learn this trick on pretty much anything. A good front brake helps, but it's not the be all and end all, because as we're going to soon see, it's just as much about body weight movement as it is the front brake. So let's get started with the endo and get you guys popping some sweet endos before moving on to showing how to do the front pivot. So the basic endo is probably a trick that you guys have tried as a kid in the street, and it's basically pulling your front brake on and getting your back wheel up in the air in a controlled manner. A lot of people would maybe just roll into their endo quite fast and think, if I just jam my brake on hard enough, it'll like put your back wheel up in the air, which it does do. The problem with relying on this front brake technique too much is you have to go quite fast, which makes you a little bit more likely to go over the handlebars, which is obviously the last thing we want to do. And it basically won't be very controlled, because it might come off the ground a little bit, or it might come off the ground completely and fling you over the bars. So you really need to think about your weight. And whilst we are going to use our front brake, it's still kind of similar to that unweighting technique that we talked about with the bunny hop, where you're actually using your body weight movement to generate the bulk of the momentum to get your back wheel up in the air. So you need to make like a really conscious effort to preload, and then as you pull your front brake, you then lift off whilst keeping your bum over the back tyre to stop yourself from going over the bars. It's all about working the front brake and your body weight in harmony. So roll in at like kind of walking pace, preload, front brake, and I almost kind of push my arms out as I push my bum out to the back to kind of get that sort of balance. And it's all about a case of trial and error to sort of find that balance point. You can always just kind of just do little ones like that to get you the feel of how far you can push it. So like I say with pretty much every trick, it's all about just feeling it out, spending a lot of time just playing with that balance point. Don't go far enough, go too far if you feel that you can get your feet down without going over the bars, and just really play around, and you'll soon find out where that optimal balance point is with that endo. One thing you can do, which you do have to be a little careful with, is if you do feel like you're going too steep, can let your front brake off, and what that will do is it will fairly quickly return your back wheel to the ground. So once you've mastered the endo, we can now look at pulling what we call a front pivot. Like I said before, the front pivot is basically an endo with a bit of rotation, and the aim of this one is to basically change your direction, get the back wheel pivoted round, and ride off in a different direction. And the way that we do this and generate that rotation is similar speed as the endo, but rather than just keeping your handlebars straight, just before you pop it, you do a little bit of a curve. And what that does is it generates the sideways momentum or rotation that you require. The rest of the rotation and continued rotation kind of comes from shifting of your body weight and also just looking. Like in so many other tricks, it's all about kind of just looking in your direction. So the harder you carve and the harder you look and the harder you shift your weight, the more you're going to rotate. Given the nature of the front pivot and where you're likely to use it on the trails, it's actually really important that you learn to do it both ways. That being said, there will be a way that will feel slightly more natural than the other. For me, for example, I'm right foot forward. So I ride typically with my right foot in this position, and it means that I just feel more comfortable rotating left to right. Some people are exceptions to this, but generally speaking, you'll rotate towards your forward foot, and when you're doing the front pivot, that's going to probably be the way that will feel better. It's similar to kind of a gap jump where you're like doing a few things. You're preloading your feet to get the back wheel up in the air, and I do think you have a little bit of a preload, and then as you lift up, I basically look in the direction that I'm wanting to rotate. So in this instance, it is to my left because I'm rotating left to right. And I kind of lead in my shoulder, so I just kind of almost have my weight a little bit more onto my right foot, and almost just basically turning my whole body, leading with my shoulders and looking with my head, and that is what gives you the rotation. Again, like the endo, it's all about trying different things and getting a feel for it. It's such fine sort of margins about what makes like a good pivot and what makes a bad one. It's all about just like sort of refining that movement. As you get more and more comfortable with just pulling some small pivots, that is when you can work yourself up to just doing bigger and bigger pivots. And like I said before, it's a fairly similar technique. It's all about just exaggerating the movement. So if you want to go from doing a 45-degree pivot all the way to a 90 or even 180-degree pivot, it's all about just maybe carving a little bit harder. The angle of the front wheel won't change much, but you're going to be just kind of exaggerating those movements. You're going to be shifting your body weight a little bit harder. You're going to be looking a little bit more in the direction you want to go. And that's basically what's going to just give you more rotational momentum to get you around. So there we have it. That was how to endo and how to front pivot. It is a pretty difficult one to explain, if I'm being honest, just because the movements of the trick are so subtle. So I tried my best to cover the main points, but if you do have any other questions, please comment below and I'll be happy to get right back to you. If you do have any questions about the bike or anything on the Marin bikes range, please comment below and those guys will be happy to get back to you. And if you have any ideas of what you'd like to see us do next, please comment below and we'll see what we can do. Catch you next time. Peace.